Unit 5, Video 9, Solve by Square Rooting. Use this method when you're able to cleanly take the square root of both sides of the equation, or you can manipulate the equation to do it this way. Alright, so first example, we're starting out really kind of simple. X squared equals 9. So we need to take the square root of both sides, because both of them are perfect squares. And when I do so, I'm left with x over here. And because I can get there two ways, my answer would be x equals plus or minus 3. So again, what this is representing is if I graph this, x squared minus 9 equals 0, if I graph that in the graphing calculator, I would see that the graph crosses both at positive 3 and negative 3 for the graph. Okay, x squared minus 4 equals 0. All right, so now we need to do one thing first. We need to move that negative 4 over to the other side by adding 4 to both sides, and that's how we get our x squared equals 4. Now we can take our square root of both sides. So we're going to take the square root of x squared and the square root of 4, which of course your calculator does the square root for you. And that's when I'm left with x is equal to a plus or minus 2, because the square root of 4 is 2. But I don't know if, because I can get there in two ways. If you look back up here, this problem right here, x squared equals 4. Well, positive 2 times positive 2 equals 4, as well as negative 2 times negative 2 equals 4. That's why you have two answers here. All right, no big deal that we have parentheses with a little more going on. So we have parentheses x minus 3 quantity squared equals 16. So my first step is still the same. I'm going to square root both sides. All right? Okay. So I'm going to do that same way. My next step, once I do that, I'm left with an x minus 3 on this side is equal to plus or minus 4. So here I have one more step that I have to do because I know that x minus 3 equals positive 4, and I know that x minus 3 is equal to negative 4. So I have to solve for both of these. Well, this one right here is a pretty easy problem. So you get x equals 7. And, because remember, we're quadratics, we always have two answers, x is equal to negative 1, because negative 4 plus 3 is a negative 1. So there would be your two answers for this problem. Okay, so we got a couple things we got to do to this problem. First of all, we've got to move that 100 to the other side. So x minus 5 squared plus 100 would then equal 100 there. I've moved it to the other side. Next step is the same. I'm going to take the square root of my x minus 5 squared, square root of 100. So I'm going to square root both sides. When I do that, I'm left with x minus 5 on this side, and I'm left with plus or minus 10 on this side. So again, like that previous problem, now I have to break it into two problems, because I know x minus 5 is equal to positive 10, and x minus 5 is equal to negative 10. Both work, so I've got to take both into account. So here we go. X is equal to 15, and x is equal to negative 5 when I solve it all the way down for x. Again, these are the two values of x, the two x-intercepts, that when you graph this, you're going to see the graph cross through these values. Okay, so sometimes we're in this situation where we're like, oh, right here we have x minus 2 quantity squared equals a number, but we're like, ooh, we could square root this side. We can square root that because we have a calculator, so we're still going to do the same steps. So here we have square root of x minus 2 quantity squared is equal to the square root of 12. Well, you have a calculator, so you're going to use your calculator. So here you still get your x minus 2. The square root of 12 is going to be plus or minus 3.4, okay? So now, again, the next step is the same. You just have to deal with the decimal. So you have x minus 2 is equal to 3.4, and x, and I don't know why I didn't round to the nearest hundredth, x minus 2 is equal to negative 3.4. Okay, so now we're going to take that next step and we're say, so that means x is equal to 5.4 and x is equal to negative 1.4. Those would be my two answers. No big deal that it's a decimal, because again, I have a calculator that will work that magic for me.